My GF said, if you really loved me, be glad I'm with my soulmate. Now, when she wants to come back, I tell her I found my soulmate, and she should be glad for me. I woke up one morning to find my girlfriend standing at the foot of my bed, a look I'd never seen before, not pity, but something chillingly like triumph. Before I could even ask what was wrong, she said 3 words that shattered my entire world: I met my soulmate. The morning air felt instantly colder. Her voice wasn't apologetic, not even sad, but vibrated with a sickening excitement, like she'd just won the lottery and expected me to cheer. Her name was Chloe. We'd been together for 3 years, lived together for 1, and I honestly thought we were heading towards marriage, kids, the whole dream. She worked at a childcare facility uptown, I was in tech sales. We had our routines, our inside jokes, even a cat named Shadow that she'd picked out. Then, one Wednesday morning, everything I believed was solid just evaporated. She told me his name was Damien, that he worked security at the shopping center near her job, that they'd been talking for 2 months, and that she felt a connection with him, a connection she'd never felt with anyone, not even me. I asked if she'd been cheating. She looked genuinely offended, like I was the unreasonable one, and then she said, "It's not cheating when it's destiny." I just sat there on the edge of the bed, trying to comprehend how someone I'd shared my life with could twist betrayal into some kind of spiritual awakening. She packed a bag that same day, claiming she'd come back for the rest later. But before she walked out, she turned, looked at me, and said something I'll never, ever forget: "If you truly loved me, you'd be happy for me and my soulmate." The door clicked shut, and I just stared at the empty space where she'd been, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out everything that mattered. I didn't cry immediately, I think I was too numb, too shocked. But when it finally hit me later that night, it hit with a force I wasn't prepared for. I called my brother. He came over with beer and pizza, didn't say much, just sat with me while I tried to make sense of how someone could leave like that, with so much certainty, with so little regret. He told me Chloe had always been a little dramatic, a little self-centered, but I'd been too close, too invested, to see it clearly. And maybe, just maybe, he was right. Looking back, I could recall moments where everything revolved around her feelings, her needs, her perfect version of how things should be, but I'd always dismissed it as passion. The next few weeks blurred into a haze of numb routines. Go to work, come home, microwave another lonely dinner. I avoided our favorite restaurants, our trails, anything that brought her back into my mind. Friends tried to set me up, telling me the best way to get over someone was to meet someone new. But I wasn't ready. I was still fixated on that phrase, "if you truly loved me." It felt like my love had been put to the ultimate test, and I'd failed by not celebrating my own abandonment. I'd convinced myself that letting her go without a fight made me noble, mature, evolved, but in reality, it just left me utterly empty. Chloe texted me a few times in those first months, mostly logistical stuff, asking about mail, about Shadow, about some forgotten lamp. And every single time her name lit up my phone, my stomach dropped. I kept my responses short, polite, never asking about Damien, never asking if she was happy. Part of me genuinely didn't want to know, and another, much larger part, was terrified she'd say yes. One text, though, really stuck with me. She sent it around 2 a.m. on a Saturday, asking if I remembered the night we'd adopted Shadow. I didn't respond. I knew she was testing me, trying to see if I'd engage, if there was still an opening. Around month 4, I started to feel like myself again, or at least a version of myself that could function without that constant, dull ache. I joined a gym, started running, dropped some weight, even grew a beard, all the cliché post-breakup reinvention stuff, and surprisingly, it actually worked. My brother dragged me to a concert one Friday night, some indie band I'd never heard of. Halfway through, I realized I hadn't thought about Chloe once in 3 hours. That felt like real progress. Then, one Saturday, at a boutique cafe near my place, the kind with exposed brick and overpriced lattes, a woman in line ahead of me turned, smiled, and said, "You look like you're deciding between caffeine and a nap." Her name was Isabella. She was a graphic designer, and she had this incredibly calm energy that felt like the absolute opposite of everything Chloe had ever been. We talked for 20 minutes in that cafe, exchanged numbers, and I walked out feeling lighter than I had in months. Our first date was dinner at a Vietnamese place uptown, nothing fancy. I remember how easy it felt, how she asked questions and actually listened, how she didn't need to be the center of attention or turn every conversation into something about fate or destiny. Isabella was grounded. She had her own life, her own friends, her own place on the other side of the city, and she didn't expect me to fill every void or solve every problem. We started seeing each other regularly, twice a week at first, then more. By month 3, I realized I was genuinely happy, a happiness I hadn't felt, even before Chloe left. She never played games, never tested me, never made me guess what she was feeling. That simplicity felt revolutionary after years of Chloe's emotional roller coasters. I stopped checking Chloe's social media, stopped wondering if she was still with Damien, stopped replaying that awful morning in my head. For the first time since the breakup, I felt like I was actually moving forward, not just surviving. Isabella met my brother, my friends, and everyone said the same thing: she's good for you, man. Stable, kind, real. My brother pulled me aside one night after dinner with Isabella and said he hadn't seen me this relaxed in years, maybe ever. That comment hit me harder than I expected, because he was right. Around month 10, I started thinking about rings, about proposals, about actually building a future with someone who genuinely wanted to build it with me. And the idea didn't scare me the way I thought it would. I took Isabella to the seaside for a long weekend. We stayed in this little bed and breakfast overlooking the water. On the last night, I asked her to marry me on the beach at sunset. She said yes, without hesitation, without drama, just pure joy. We told our families, started planning an engagement party, picked a wedding date, and I felt like I'd finally, truly closed the chapter on Chloe. Like she was just a painful memory that had ultimately led me somewhere far better. I even found myself grateful in a strange way. Because without that pain, I never would have appreciated what real stability felt like, never would have recognized how utterly exhausting it had been to constantly manage someone else's emotions. A year after Chloe walked out, I was engaged to someone who actually valued me, who didn't see love as a competition or some cosmic test. I honestly thought that was the end of her role in my life. I was so wrong. Our engagement party was supposed to be intimate, maybe 40 people at a gallery space uptown, exposed beams, string lights. Nothing over the top, just family and close friends celebrating something that felt profoundly right. Isabella's mom had helped plan, my brother handled the music. Everything was perfect, until it absolutely wasn't. I was by the bar, chatting with my cousin, when I saw her walk in. For a split second, I genuinely thought I was hallucinating, like my brain had just conjured her out of some lingering anxiety. Chloe. She was wearing a cream-colored dress, the kind you'd wear to a garden party or maybe someone else's wedding, and she had this unsettling expression, like she belonged there, like she was just fashionably late. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might actually throw up right there next to the appetizers. Isabella was across the room talking to her sister and hadn't seen her yet. An immediate wave of panic washed over me. What was going to happen? How would this play out? Should I intercept Chloe before she ventured deeper? I started walking toward her, but she moved fast, weaving through clusters of guests like she knew exactly where she was going. Before I could reach her, she'd already grabbed a glass of champagne off a passing tray and positioned herself near the small stage we'd set up for toasts. My brother spotted her and shot me this "what the hell" look. I just shook my head, wordless, planless, still trying to process that she'd actually crashed my engagement party. She didn't approach me directly, didn't pull me aside for a private conversation. Instead, she just stood there, sipping her champagne, watching. And the worst part was how utterly comfortable she seemed, as if she were observing something that deeply involved her, something she had a rightful stake in. A few guests recognized her. I saw the confused glances, the whispered questions, people trying to figure out why my ex-girlfriend was at my engagement party in a dress that screamed main character energy. My cousin walked over and quietly asked if I wanted him to handle it, meaning, ask her to leave. But I told him to wait, foolishly hoping she'd just make her grand appearance and then quietly exit. Isabella finally noticed her. I saw the moment of recognition, then a flicker of concern cross her face. She walked over, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "Is that Chloe?" I nodded, and she said, "We should just ignore her. She'll leave on her own." But Chloe wasn't planning to leave quietly. About 20 minutes into the party, my brother went up to give his toast. He'd barely started talking about how happy he was for us when, suddenly, Chloe moved toward the stage. She didn't ask permission, didn't wait for an invitation, she just walked right up and took the microphone from my brother's hand while he stood there, too stunned to stop her. The room went silent. That awful, suffocating kind of silence where everyone knows something terrible is unfolding, but nobody knows how to intervene. Chloe smiled at the crowd, like she was about to deliver joyous news, and began talking about love, about second chances, about how sometimes we make mistakes that ultimately lead us back home. She declared, "True love doesn't give up. Sometimes the universe tests us to see if we're strong enough to fight for what matters." With growing horror, I realized she wasn't there to apologize or even just cause a scene for attention. She was there to reclaim me, to publicly announce that I was still hers. Isabella's grip on my hand tightened, and I could feel her shaking, not with fear, but with a simmering anger. I knew, with absolute certainty, that I had to do something before this spiraled completely out of control. I walked up to the stage, holding out my hand for the microphone. Chloe hesitated, looking at me with this hopeful expression, as if I was about to agree with her, about to validate whatever twisted fantasy she'd constructed. I took the microphone, looked out at all these people who'd come to celebrate Isabella and me, people who had no idea what Chloe had put me through. And in that moment, I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I turned to Chloe and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You once told me that when you love someone, you should be happy for them and their soulmate." She flinched, as if I'd physically slapped her. I continued, "Isabella is mine. Please be happy for me, and please leave my life." The room was absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Chloe's face cycled through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds: confusion, anger, humiliation, raw rage. She started yelling, calling me selfish, cruel, claiming I'd never understood her, that I'd never fought for her, that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I just stood there, microphone in hand, as she spiraled. Finally, Isabella's dad subtly signaled, and 2 security guards started making their way toward the stage. That's when I recognized one of them, the taller guy with the buzz cut and the radio clipped to his belt. It was Damien. Apparently, he'd started moonlighting at private events after his shopping center gig. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Chloe saw him at the exact same moment I did, and something in her snapped completely. She lunged at him, actually lunged, started hitting his chest, screaming, "You were supposed to be different. You promised me forever." Damien looked mortified, trying to grab her wrists while somehow staying professional, and his partner jumped in to help restrain her. Chloe was utterly unhinged now, spitting, scratching, calling Damien a failure, calling me a coward, calling Isabella names I won't repeat. They finally managed to secure her arms and started walking her toward the exit while she thrashed and screamed. Every single person at that party just watched in stunned, horrified silence. I saw Damien's face as they passed me, saw the exhaustion, the regret. And I understood that whatever Chloe had promised him about destiny and soulmates had crumbled, just like it had with me. He caught my eye for just a second, and I saw something there that looked like an apology, like he finally understood what I'd been dealing with. The door closed behind them. The room remained quiet for another few seconds. Then, my brother grabbed the microphone and, with perfect timing, said, "Well, that was unexpected. Let's get back to celebrating these two." People laughed nervously, and conversation slowly, tentatively, started up again. Isabella pulled me aside into a hallway and asked, "Are you okay?" And I realized I was. I was truly okay. Because for the first time since Chloe left, I'd chosen peace over trying to save her, chosen my future over her never-ending chaos. She hugged me tight and whispered that she was proud of me. And in that embrace, something broke loose in my chest, some last piece of guilt I'd been carrying about not fighting harder when Chloe first left. We went back to the party, finishing the night surrounded by people who genuinely loved us, who truly wanted us to be happy. When we got home, holding Isabella, I felt an overwhelming gratitude that I'd let Chloe go, that I hadn't fought for something that was already destroying me. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from an unknown number and a voicemail from Chloe, crying about how I'd humiliated her, how I'd turned everyone against her, how I'd ruined her life. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. I thought the worst was finally over. I thought that public humiliation would be enough to make her disappear for good, that we could finally move on without her shadow hanging over us. I didn't know she was just getting started. I really thought that after the engagement party disaster, Chloe would finally disappear. That the sheer humiliation of being dragged out by security would be enough to make her move on. But 2 weeks later, I got a call from a lawyer I didn't recognize, asking if I knew anything about a lawsuit. Chloe had filed it against Damien, and against the security company he worked for, claiming excessive force, emotional distress, physical assault, the whole 9 yards. She was asking for $2 million, positioning herself as a victim brutalized by aggressive security guards at a private event. My first reaction was utter disbelief, then cold panic. Even though I wasn't named in the suit, I knew this could spiral into something that would touch Isabella and me, dragging our names through depositions, court documents, and local news. I called Isabella immediately. She could hear the stress, the fear in my voice, and she told me to breathe. Told me we'd handle it together. Told me Chloe couldn't hurt us unless we let her. But I was genuinely scared. I'd seen what Chloe could do when she felt wronged, how she could twist narratives, play the victim, and make people believe her version of events. The security company hired a defense team, and I was contacted by their lawyer. They wanted a statement about what happened that night, about Chloe's behavior leading up to the incident, about whether I'd seen her attack Damien first. I told them everything, gave them a detailed written statement, walked them through the entire evening from the moment she walked in uninvited to the moment she lunged at Damien. They seemed confident they had a strong case. But I just couldn't shake this dread, this feeling that Chloe would somehow find a way to win, to make everyone else pay for her bad decisions. The lawyer mentioned that several guests had also given statements corroborating my account, which should have made me feel better. Somehow, it just made it worse, because now even more people were getting dragged into Chloe's chaotic orbit. The lawsuit moved forward, and a preliminary hearing was scheduled for early fall, about 4 months after the engagement party. During that entire time, I barely slept. I kept imagining the worst-case scenarios, Chloe winning millions, the story going viral, our wedding getting postponed or even cancelled because of media attention, my job finding out and questioning my judgment. My boss actually pulled me aside one day and asked if everything was okay because my performance had dropped. I had to explain the situation without sounding like I was in some kind of reality TV drama. Isabella, though, she just kept planning the wedding. Kept moving forward like Chloe didn't even exist. I tried to match her calm, but inside, I was falling apart. She'd pick out flowers, and I'd be thinking about court dates. She'd talk about the honeymoon, and I'd be obsessively refreshing news sites to see if the lawsuit had been covered. I started having nightmares about Chloe showing up at the wedding, about her filing more lawsuits, about this never, ever ending. The day of the hearing finally arrived. I sat in the courtroom gallery next to Isabella, watching Chloe walk in, wearing a conservative dress and minimal makeup, playing the part of the wounded innocent. She had a lawyer who looked expensive, probably someone she'd convinced to take the case on contingency. He made his opening statement, arguing that his client had been physically assaulted without provocation, that she'd suffered lasting psychological trauma, that the security company had failed in its duty to use appropriate force. Then the defense attorney stood up and, to my absolute shock, mentioned that body cam footage had been submitted as evidence. My heart rate spiked. I hadn't known they had video. The lawyer asked to play it for the court, and suddenly, everyone in that room could see exactly what happened. We saw Chloe lunging at Damien, spitting in his face, scratching at his arms while he tried desperately to back away and maintain professional distance. You could hear her screaming on the audio, calling him a failure, calling him worthless. Then, both guards trying to restrain her as gently as humanly possible while she thrashed and kicked. The footage ran for maybe 3 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. When it ended, the judge looked at Chloe's lawyer with an expression that said everything. Chloe stood up before her lawyer could even respond, yelling that the video was edited, that it didn't show what happened before, that they were all protecting each other. The judge told her to sit down and be quiet, or he'd hold her in contempt. Her lawyer tried to salvage something, arguing that even if she'd been aggressive, the guards had used excessive force. But the judge wasn't buying it. He dismissed the case entirely, calling it frivolous and a waste of the court's time. Then he did something I didn't expect. He ordered Chloe to pay the security company's legal fees and issued a formal reprimand that would stay on her record. Chloe absolutely lost it right there in the courtroom. She started screaming about injustice, about corruption, about how everyone was against her, and the bailiff had to escort her out while she yelled threats at Damien, at the lawyers, at the judge. I sat there, feeling this strange mix of overwhelming relief and profound emptiness, like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale, but didn't quite know what to do with the air. The security company's lawyer told me afterward that they were considering filing a countersuit for defamation and abuse of process, and I immediately said I'd cooperate however they needed. Chloe's lawsuit wasn't just dismissed, it was recorded as a loss with penalties, which meant she now had legal fees she couldn't pay and a public record that made her look unstable and litigious. About a month later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd been fired from the childcare facility uptown. Apparently, the lawsuit and her very public breakdown had made parents uncomfortable, and the administration decided she was a liability. One parent had even seen the engagement party meltdown video that someone had posted online, and that alone was enough to raise serious concerns about her judgment around children. Then, I heard she'd moved back in with her parents on the other side of the city, that Damien had blocked her on everything and gotten a restraining order after she'd shown up at his apartment multiple times, that she was now working as a cleaning person for a commercial building uptown. Part of me, I admit, wanted to feel vindictive, wanted to celebrate her downfall. But mostly, I just felt tired. So incredibly relieved that the chaos was finally over. Isabella and I got married that December in a small, private ceremony, with tight security and a carefully curated guest list. No drama, no surprises, just two people promising to build something stable and real together. The venue had strict instructions about Chloe, with her photo provided to security. I hated that we had to take those precautions, but it felt necessary. We bought a house in the outskirts, adopted a dog, started talking about kids, and I realized I'd completely stopped thinking about Chloe, except as a cautionary tale I might tell someday. Last I heard, she was still working that cleaning job, still living with her parents, still posting cryptic things on social media about betrayal and karma. A buddy sent me a screenshot once of her posting something about fighting for love. I didn't even feel angry, just sad. Sad that she'd burned down her entire life chasing some fantasy about destiny and soulmates. Isabella got pregnant in early 2024, and we had a beautiful daughter this past January. Holding her in the hospital, I thought about how drastically different my life would have been if Chloe hadn't left. If I'd stayed in that relationship and eventually married her, I would have been miserable. Constantly managing her moods, constantly wondering when the next crisis would hit, constantly walking on eggshells around someone who saw everything as a test of loyalty. She said she just wanted to fight for love, wanted to follow her heart, wanted to be happy. But love doesn't look like destruction. Real love looks like Isabella falling asleep on the couch while feeding our daughter at 3 a.m. It looks like building something quiet and lasting. It looks like choosing someone every single day without drama or cosmic signs. Chloe taught me what I didn't want. And for that, I guess I should be grateful. But I will never, ever understand how someone can confuse chaos with passion, mistake obsession for destiny, and destroy everything around them while still calling it love. What do you think? Was my approach to that moment on stage the right one?